Hey guys, and welcome back to another weekly horoscope. Today we're going to be looking at the astrology of August 24th to the 30th, 2021. My name's David, and I'm your astrologer from HC Astrology. Thanks for being here, and thanks for all your support, liking, commenting, subscribing. It all goes a super long way. So, I'm going to try and just get right into it this week. As you can see, I'm not in my usual place. I'm currently traveling. So I'm unable to use my usual setup, but we'll have to make do and see how it goes. So I'm just going to jump right into it, and hopefully we can make this work. So here you can see this week's astrology. Let me just jump my annotator here. So I think this week in general is like us kind of adjusting to this new Virgo season. As every year, this is going to be the last light dominant season of the year. Although there's not really huge, major, detrimental, hardcore things happening this week, it is a bit of a week where we're trying to adjust to this consolidating, where we're trying to get more realistic and prepare a little bit more for the seasons ahead. So there's not too much going on this week, mostly lunar transits, and we get to enjoy Venus in Libra for the most part. But the moon will be revealing some of the more kind of lurking secrets in the dark right now. And I think for the most part, we're kind of just setting off from that second Aquarius full moon that happened over the weekend. And as well, taking on some of the qualities of the Sun-Jupiter opposition as well that happened kind of simultaneously. And so we're kind of, like I said, we're getting a bit more out of the Venus and Libra transit and the vibes from the Aquarius full moon. And also with Monday, that Venus trine Saturn. So this is really flavoring the week. And mostly the weird things for this week that I wanted to point out would be, so starting on Wednesday, we get that, probably you're already starting to feel it too, is the Mercury opposition to Neptune. And then later in the week, we get the last quarter moon, as well as the sun's going to be squaring the nodes. But I think the most exciting part of this week is actually the end of it. So next Monday, Mercury's going to move into Libra and join Venus. So let's break all this down and start from the top and move on from there. So for anyone who's joining me for the first time, I'm using a 0 Aries chart. So the signs are not moving. There's no house placements in the chart. It's just to watch the planets transit. And that means that we're just going to be getting kind of the background noises. So not all the transits are going to apply to you specifically. They may be more about world events. They may be more about other people. They may be about places. But for the most part, you can get a sense that this is going to be the vibrations behind things on the most part, kind of like the background noise. So think about a bit about like a weather forecast. And I'm doing the transits now while I'm traveling from St. John's, Newfoundland, which is in Canada. And I'm starting on the 24th of August. And you can just think of this as a world time clock. It's like a world clock of any kind. So just because the timing is going to be a little bit different for you, doesn't mean the transits are going to be different. Think of it as a world clock. You just adjust it to your time. Transits will be the same. Okay, so let's start the top with Tuesday, August 24th, starting at the beginning of the day. First things first, the moon is going to be conjoining with Neptune. And hold on. And that's going to carry over this opposition that Mercury and Mars were making to, Mercury and Mars would have been making to Neptune as well. So Mercury the moon opposition to Mercury and Mars, and then Mercury is going to be making an opposition to Neptune. And so this is kind of like carrying that in. It's kind of like revealing things about what those transits mean and what they're going to be about for each of us. So on some levels, it's like realizing and understanding that not all the information right now is really clear. Something on some level is missing, and there's some kind of a disconnect between where we want to feel relaxed and letting go of the outside world in some part. So somehow maybe the outside world is saying, hey, something is missing, or you didn't do your homework, or you forgot about me, or you just can't relax yet. And so on some level, there's a blind spot being revealed. For instance, you know, how they're talking about in the news, it's like, maybe you got the wrong vaccine. I think they were saying that like anyone who got the Russian Sputnik vaccine, you know, maybe this doesn't qualify for certain countries, or maybe if you got the Johnson & Johnson, you have to get a second dose or something like that. So anyways, it could be on some level you're seeing that something was overlooked, something was missing, and you know, you can still enjoy what you're doing. You can still enjoy where you're at. It's not like the world's being flipped upside down. It's not the end of the world. So just deal with it, even if it's a bit boring. And this is going to be kind of flavoring the week in general, and just let it go. Just deal with it. It doesn't have to be perfect. So then the next thing that happens is that the moon's going to be perfecting the sextile to Pluto. So let's just highlight that a bit. And you know, maybe this is kind of, I think on some level with the sextile there is this kind of like sense of being able to relax over maybe something that there was some fear over during the moon's transit through Capricorn last week. I also see this as like there being some sort of calmness in general to something that was fearful and scary, some sort of potential situation that could have been scary. So for example, maybe just from the news, maybe the US is still prioritizing their evacuations. And although this is maybe a fearful situation for people who have to go through that, or for what people are thinking that's going to mean in general, on some level, there's still some adjustments being made and harmonizing to at least be able to calmly deal with those situations, you know, like, and also, for instance, in New Zealand, there's still these new lockdown measures for the Delta variant. And perhaps that is scary for them, and it may be somehow revealing something scary for the rest of the world, that even a place like New Zealand is still having to deal with a lockdown, even though there's all this talk right now that with the vaccines, the pandemic, you know, should be over or whatever. So this is kind of adjusting to that, maybe getting in a calmer place about that whole situations, those situations in general, not necessarily the ones I described, but something that may have had brought some fear. Right. Okay. So then the moon moves into, after that, the moon just makes no aspects and moves into Aries. And when the moon moves into Aries, we get this energy shift. Now the energy is going to be doing Mars things. So efforts are going to be made, pushing things forward, doing something a bit more bluntly or courageously, being a bit more inventive or pioneering on some level. And things are going to become just in general more direct, especially as it comes to where Mars is presently, which is in Virgo, just after that conjunction to Mercury. So things are going to be more direct. They're going to be more honest, unbridled, and not really held back as they come to some sort of detailing and analyzing and picking things apart, and somehow getting a preparedness, a kind of a fear of things not being prepared enough, and needing to deal with things as directly as possible, in order to get things more prepared. So we're going to want to figure something out before we can move forward with things. And on some level, I see this as like an obsessiveness to figure things out. I kind of talked about it a couple of weeks ago of like, oh, you lost your keys or something, and you can't do anything until the keys are found. And I feel like this is kind of emphasizing that sort of quality again. Before we can really move forward, we have to figure something out. All right, and that basically ends Tuesday for me here. And I'm just going to move right into Wednesday. So, hold on. So, let's move on to Wednesday, August 25th. First thing really that happens this day is the Mercury opposition to Neptune. So that would already been building up, and I think that transit from Moon over Neptune would have given us a sense of like what this is going to be about, which has something to do with a bit of a reality check. So it's not a very sympathetical relationship. Neptune and Mercury don't really make sense together. You know, Neptune just wants to drift apart, drift away, dissolve, disconnect, or to connect on a more, like oceanic way of being, where the problems are not specific, and we can kind of disassociate from the reality of things. Well, Mercury really wants to face the facts. And I see this on some level as like maybe we're in a magical place, or we're seeing something really magical, seeing something very beautiful and tantalizing and dreamy and otherworldly, but not really seeing that. We're only seeing kind of the differences and not the similarities. You know, like I said, Mercury is this planet of facts and details, and Neptune is a planet of fantasy and illusion. So these don't mix so well. This is not accepting the fantasy, not accepting the illusion, perhaps only seeing the poor qualities in a special effects of something. Like when you go, like I remember when like Game of Thrones came out, and I was really into it. And there'd be some people who just wanted to see the problems with it. It's like, oh, the dire wolves, the CGI is horrible. Why didn't they do it this way? Why didn't they do it that way? And I think this is like kind of like that. It's like seeing how things could have been done better, but they're not. But better to who? Better according to who? And that's something I think we would want to remember. And I think it's impossible when we're in that mindset to enjoy the story, because we're only focused on the technicals. We're seeing only the trees and not the forest. And something needs to be maybe said about this, about what's not being adding up on some level, about maybe what's being lost in delusions. And maybe this is not holding back on some sort of comment or conversation that needs to be had, because maybe someone or something is not being realistic or is not a realistic situation. So there needs to be on some level some sort of real conversation, or it will be disconnected from the context. This is kind of a classic case of fact versus fiction on some level. So, if you're someplace, letting loose on some level, but, back somewhere else, someone's expecting you to be there on some level, but, maybe it's not possible. Maybe a conversation just needs to be had. So just remember that maybe not everything needs to be discussed. Maybe the conversation that we had can be, of course, honest and open and trusting, but it doesn't need to be dissected. It's just maybe just reassurances. You might get yourself into trouble if you really try to point out every single flaw in something. And on most part, in my experience, disenchantment is a normal process. It's a normal part of life. So just try to let go and pick your battles, because not everything that doesn't meet to our expectations is something that needs to be dismantled, needs to be taken apart and analyzed and shown its flaws. So other than that, on Wednesday, the remainder of the day is mostly a lunar day. So Moon is still in this kind of funny place in Aries, Not that the moon has poor dignity there, which, which is funny to me because, the moon has its fall in Scorpio. So obviously it's not terribly happy about being in a Mars ruled sign. But on some level, Mars's moon is at least not in any really harsh aspects except for to Pluto. So moon's kind of in this funny place, we're still getting focused on something that needs to be done, getting a point across on some level, feeling a little bit more bold and maybe confrontational with something. But what's nice is that, while the moon's going through Aries, it gets to first off make that trine to Saturn. So I'll just highlight that there. Makes the trine to Saturn. And I feel like this, for instance, has a lot to do with where we're at now since the full moon, because of the full moon happening while the moon was kind of in Aquarius, just came out of the conjunction with Saturn, moving towards a conjunction with Jupiter in the full moon. And I think this is about coming to some point since that commitment, since some sort of reward for some hardship we endured, some border that was crossed, some line that was crossed, or sometimes when you do something really important in your life and you cross that line, you go from one part of life to another. And on some level, I think now there's something being said that's asking us to maybe make some adjustment, to consider how the other side, or to slow us down and to make some sort of reharmonization from that. So maybe if there was a really high culminating point from that moment, this is kind of like getting back a bit more to reality, which again, like I said, I think this week is a bit more of like coming back to reality a little bit, like things are not going to be up in the pink cloud forever. And, on some level, it could be difficult from the moon's perspective at this place in Aries. But what I think makes maybe whatever adjustment does need to be made at least manageable, and also even quite helpful, is that opposition that it makes shortly after to Venus in Libra, which is actually Saturn's exaltation. So I think in general, this combination of the moon kind of translating something that's reharmonizing things, even if we're in this kind of bold having to deal with something, do something place, reminding us that we made a big commitment, we crossed a big line, we did a big feat, and even though we have to get things done, we can still find a reharmonizing by coming back to what that commitment means to us. And I think that opposition to Venus, it shows us what that means. It shows us that this thing really matters to us. We get a lot of pleasure from it. We also connect with others. We bind with others. And I think that this opposition to Libra also is kind of flipping the table maybe on some Venus parts of our lives, relationships and pleasures and things like that. And so maybe for some of us, we're reminded of that commitment we made, or that distancing we made, or whatever line we crossed, some reward to the hardship we went through. And this is kind of showing us what that is. And if there's a table that needs to be flipped, or a change in that, there's this exchange that needs to happen. Maybe that conversation or a situation that was negotiated with the Mercury oppositions, that we can still know that whatever a difficult conversation it was, or whatever difficult situation it was, the words are out, and could be some draw, there could be some change of the sides of things. It's not going to be the end of the world. Who did you maybe meet in the last days? What took place? What is it you're trying to maybe avoid out of fear, and maybe having some sense of like not being accepted, not being loved because of something maybe you're holding back, or from a conversation you had. And this is maybe like making it clear that even if the thing is really bothering you and you want to be out and open about it, that really honesty is going to be accepted. And I think the opposition, and with these nice transits between Venus and Saturn still kind of lingering there, with the trine between Saturn and Venus, and then the sextile, it's like, sure, it's not necessarily the most comfortable situation, and maybe we're afraid of just being blunt and honest about things, but that honesty will be accepted, I think, and maybe respected, even loved, maybe appreciated, and just this kind of reminder that everything's going to be okay, and kind of how maybe the people we met in the last days, or the things that took place, they're not things that need to be avoided. They're not things that need to be worried about so much. Everything's going to be okay. Okay, so that's it for Wednesday. Let's just move on into Thursday. So moon continues through Aries into Thursday. And first things first, we get the Mercury-Pluto trine. So I'll just brush that out there. Whoops. So yeah, I think with the Mercury-Pluto trine, I think, maybe this is just further emphasizing that whatever conversation needed to be had, or that happened, or needs to still happen, everything's going to be okay. This is kind of maybe addressing some sort of topic related to fear or anxiety, not really knowing if it's the right thing to do, not necessarily, or at least knowing maybe the thing was the right thing to do, but being afraid that even though it's the right thing to do, it might upset the balance on some level. But then, everything's going to be all right. It all works out at some level, and we can at least accept each other for our honesty. So I think that's a nice reminder that, maybe that if there's something we wanted to say coming up to that opposition to Venus and the sextile to Saturn, that with the Mercury trine to Pluto, it's like, the message or the exchange has a clear way of dealing with the thing that we're kind of afraid of, or maybe the message that comes out about something that is fearful has some sort of positive solution to it, or positive result on some level. Okay, so basically the rest of the day is just lunar transits. Like most of this week is actually just lunar transits. So the moon just continues through Aries and then hits that square to Pluto, actually. So just highlight that. Yeah, sorry if my apps keep coming up there, but I'm not on my double screen now, so that's just the way it's going to be. Moon's going to square to Pluto, and I think this is more just like saying, and this is kind of the side story to things. It's like, even though there's conversation that needs to be had, something we need to deal with on some level, honesty is accepted and all that. There's good results to a topic that we're afraid of dealing with. But there's always a kind of another side to things. Maybe there's somebody left out of the conversation. And although on one side of things, there's clarity, acceptance, getting through a bout of fear on some level, that there's this left side. There's left one side of things that's worried that the conversation maybe won't go over smoothly. There's this other side where someone else is not really getting what they want. Somebody else's needs are not necessarily being met. And we can maybe in this chance kind of try to appease this other side of things, or just really there's this other side, I think, to the story this week of like how no matter how good a job we do, we can't make everyone happy. You know what I mean? So if maybe there is someone out there expecting something, wanting something, needing something, but then there's this kind of massive space between them, maybe there's nothing that can be done. It's just the circumstance of things with the moon there in a place that is trying to deal with, finding those keys, dealing with those details, getting the necessities done. And the moon is really just focused on that. It could be that there's another circumstance, but there's nothing that can be done necessarily. It could be one that's very destructive on some level, or there starts to be a pent up feeling of anxiety that comes with it, some sort of disappointment controlled by fear. And maybe there's going to be a need to release that because if it's not maybe addressed on some level, they could be holding it in for a while. And the longer you're holding something that's causing a lot of anxiety, the more it's going to build up and kind of fester and get really detrimental and hardcore, hard to deal with, intense. So, you know, if they hold it in, it could be very destructive. It could be a destructive problem in the future. The moon is in this maybe a bit more blunt place right now, a bit more confrontational, so fearful, being in a Mars ruled sign, and in a hostile conflict resolution oriented place as well, on some level, just coming off the opposition to Venus. But connecting to Pluto in such a harsh way could be very powerful, could be a bit demonic, even uncontrollable, what I mean, and potentially, like I said, have a destructive quality to it. But I think with all transits to Pluto, even if there is like a destructiveness, a darkness to them, there's a purifying process to these Pluto's interactions with things. And even if we get kind of tossed into this underworld, so to speak, at some point we're going to emerge on the other side. You can think about you know, all the mythological stories of figures who go down to Hades, down to the underworld. At some point, they reemerge on the other side. There's this reemergence process that happens. So I think in this case, and especially for the rest of the week, we have to really learn how to practice principles over personalities. And what that means is, like, how do we stick to what we believe in and not just fall back on kind of ego characteristics that are kind of so bent up on, like, you know, our sense of arrogance, or our high overbeared sense of self, which, you know, may not seem that way to us personally, but that's the tricky qualities of these fears, is that they can control us if we don't learn to let them go. So other than that, as you can see, the moon is also moving into the sextile with Jupiter. And I think this is kind of just adjusting to the matter and kind of getting back to what was going on maybe on some level before this kind of harder qualities were coming in, and maybe just being honest, having faith, keeping an open mind, and trying to practice willingness on some level. And these are like really basic tools. I think these are tools that if we use them in all our situations, we can trust that at least the bare minimum is in some sort of practice, some sort of principle, some sort of spiritual principle is being considered. And I really believe that when we use these tools, even if they're a little bit bluntly used, they at least keep the situation at large on a path that leads to some sort of peace of mind or equanimity of some kind. And I think, like, sure, we can't get everything we want all the time. We can't just live in la la land forever, but we are following some sort of path, and maybe that path leads towards something that is maybe best for the greater whole with Jupiter in Aquarius. And if we're just, you know, maybe running around doing whatever we want, taking whatever we want, and not really considering the consequences, then we are going to be hurting others, and we are going to be eventually also really hurting, I think, ultimately hurting ourselves. And this is, in a way, I think the sextile is a good thing. I mean, I think sextiles, although they're called positive aspects, I think they're really just about like making these adjustment things. And sometimes adjustments are not what we want necessarily, but they do reharmonize things. They bring things back into balance on some kind of level. And I think this is making adjustment really to get back on plan, doing what needs to be done for the bigger picture, and accepting that there's something greater at ourselves at work right now. We have the opportunity here to be a better person. We don't have to worry about, you know, wrong reputations or being wrong or what other people think about us. This is just about doing what we know is right, even if on some level there's still a bit of fear involved. And I guess, in my opinion, you know, being a better person means knowing what is the right thing to do and doing it. So yeah, and I think this is just like understanding that it's not all about ourselves at this time. It's also about letting go of that belief that we're some protagonist in the story of our lives, that we're some big main character. And maybe in this situation, we're not. And sometimes that can be hard to accept, but I think when accepted, it's very liberating. All right, so let's move on into Friday. Okay, so Friday. So basically, Moon doesn't make any more aspects as it moves through Aries and then moves into Taurus. So again, this energy shift, the Moon's going to gain in dignity. It's now considered exalted. But at the same time, there's going to be quite a lot going on for the Moon through Taurus, as it has been for the last, since Saturn and Uranus have been in the fixed signs, Aquarius and Taurus. It has been a lot for the Moon, but I think this is the first time since the last time the Moon went through Taurus that Jupiter is back in Aquarius. And so, it's kind of a lot for the Moon because it's going to be squaring Jupiter as well. And it's a lot to deal with what we're going through right now, with this sense of things being on the right path, that there's no sense in letting, our feelings being hurt because, we can get a moment to enjoy things. There is going to be kind of a tricky situations to go through, but the Moon's still in higher dignity. There will be a chance to at least enjoy something along the way, and to whatever work what needs to be done now is going to be about getting back to a place where we can enjoy ourselves, where we can have pleasure again. So although it will feel a bit like not exactly what we want to do, it will go towards like I think of Taurus as a steadfast kind of working towards a higher state on some level and going things the slow path. And I think that these transits through Taurus, especially now, is going to be about like how, although maybe the pleasure we're seeking is not exactly able to be soaked in right now, in the long term, it will be. So it's kind of like maybe on some level sacrificing the present for the future. Arguably not always the best and most exciting way of living, but sometimes it's necessary. And I think in general, the Moon in Taurus is typically a good thing. But like I said, with Saturn and Uranus in this dynamic, these typical Turian types of transits, which have to do with having pleasure and enjoying the little things in life, are going to continue to be somewhat disruptive, constricting, unpredictable. Those things that we want steadfast and solid are going to be unpredictable on some level, and which is a contrast to what we want them to be. But I think the best thing going on is that the Moon first makes a trine to a newly Virgo Sun, which I think is a good thing. I think it's a good thing because although the Moon is coming up to the square with Saturn, and it's going to make that conjunction Uranus, and so that's complicated, this is just some reminder, I think, that and feeling that we're on this right path, we're on some right track. And what was started with the new Moon 3 weeks ago is at least working out on some level. And if it is not, we can at least feel like there's a sense of how to get back on track, especially after letting go or making some changes to the plot line after the full moon on Saturday night. So the Moon then just continues and then makes that square to Saturn. So yeah, this is reactivating the Saturn-Uranus dynamic, of course. Saturn is kind of pulling us back, setting up a roadblock of some kind. Moon wants to enjoy itself, wants to be creative, wants to express that there's pleasure to be exalted in at this time. But Saturn's reminding us that there's something to be done, not enough to go around on some level. Maybe there's not enough resource, or there's not enough tables at the restaurant. There's not enough time to make a healthy negotiation that works everything in everyone's favors. So there's some limiting to the context from just sitting back and relaxing and allowing the world to happen, to enjoy the sounds of the birds and the sun on our face. And somehow luxury can't be enjoyed. I think too, if things are limited, especially maybe resources, we can't just enjoy luxuries if the fridge is not full, if the roof over our head is not there, if the water's not running. So we have to do things in order to get those things back in order. And that's kind of it for Friday. So let's go into Saturday. All right. So yeah, first things first, we get that conjunction of Moon to Uranus. And so, yeah, this is this kind of like unstable disruption to the lack of possibilities to relax and take pleasure right now. You know, maybe the ground is crumbling. Like, you know, if you've ever been to a coastline or to a cliff face and you're trying to climb up some sand dune or some very dirt crusted cliff face, you know, that's going to be falling apart on us. We have to put in some sort of different effort in order to get up that face, that cliff face or that sand dune. We have to put in an additional effort, some sort of changing of how we are making a climb or making a way of doing things. And then things that are typically working are not working the same way. If we haven't been flexible, then this is feeling how the inflexibility really isn't working. And of course, you know, people can put their heels in. We can put our heels in, refuse to compromise, and not have some sort of willingness to try different way of doing things. But I think if that's the way we've been always doing things, then we're going to have to accept that good results are not always going to work out. Results of any kind may not work out at all. So decisions may have been made, and realizing that, you know, it's not always about us. You know, especially if somebody else's plans are bigger than our plans. You know, how can we either let go of what we're being very steadfast in, that we're putting our heels in about, get over it, move on. And I would just say, you know, just because there's any setbacks now doesn't necessarily mean there's setbacks the rest of our lives. And maybe this is a chance to maybe get a bit of a grip on things, you know. All right, so then the moon moves past the conjunction and makes that trine to Mars, which I think is a good thing because it shows that if we put in that additional effort, there is some results to be had. So I think at least even if we feel like there is things that need to be done and we don't want to do them, that there is this energy, there is effort available to do those things. We can get them done. It just means that we have to put our own desires aside for the time being, dealing with whatever it is, getting it, and then getting what we want later. A challenge, you know, needs to be set for ourselves. We have to push ourselves. We have to, and we can get to a place where we want to go by not just holding ourselves back, by holding back others, by allowing others to hold us back. We were held back for the time with the Saturn square, but things are different now. We have to push forward. We have to put in a different kind of effort if we want to get some sort of positive results and get to a higher place in things. So check out where you're at, and if you have a willingness to push forward, use that, because if you do, then that will definitely be acknowledged, I think, on some level. Even if it's not clearly seen right now, others definitely appreciate an honest effort and a principled way of living, even if there's judgment towards it. You know, you can't please everyone, but if you can live with some sort of integrity and you put your efforts toward that, it will be acknowledged. So do something that sets things up for something good to happen down the road. I think that's what I see this transit in some way. It's like now's the time to kind of set up the pieces for something good to happen, to play out a scenario where good things do happen in the future. So we can't just play on luxury. We can't just play on pleasure, because we have to set things up for things to work more for the good in the future. All right, and then we get that sextile that the moon makes to Uranus. I'm sorry, Neptune. I don't really have so much to say about this, but I think that at least it suggests that maybe some efforts that we're going through right now, they're not going to be forever. Maybe the boring things that we have to do are not the only stories in our lives. We can get some time to be a bit cozy, be a bit you know, lazy on the couch, veg out a bit, maybe distract ourselves a bit, get some harmony back between just putting in a lot of effort and using all our energy and like getting some checkout time, so to speak. So maybe we can enjoy a bit, something pleasurable for a bit, escape for a bit, whatever, on some level, maybe get over whatever has been holding us back, remembering that, you know, exhaustion is not forever either. But it's also okay, but it's also kind of easy to get lost in this feeling of exhaustion if we're always telling ourselves we're exhausted. Then that's what we'll be. And I think it's pretty amazing how the things we're always telling ourselves actually define our world in day-to-day life. And if we can just learn to stop saying things that are putting ourselves down, that are making us lesser than where we're the reality of things, then you know, then we're always going to be there. And this is kind of like a mode to adjust to that and to try and get some relaxation, to not just tell ourselves that we're exhausted all the time, that we're broke all the time, something like that. Like I remember I used to always say how I was always broke all the time. And then when I kind of stopped saying that, it's like, you know, I'm not wealthy or anything, but you know, I don't have to worry so much about destitution as long as I do the work, do the next right thing, things generally work out. All right, that's it for Saturday. Let's move on to Sunday. So first things first, Moon makes a trine to Pluto. And yeah, some level, I think it's kind of getting to a better place in this story of what it was that we are afraid to deal with. There's a sense that whatever honesty or dealing with whatever we were afraid of was for the best. You know, it's not a big deal, maybe. We're at least dealing with it and we're moving forward. And then also this day, we get that sun squaring the nodes. So I don't have any aspects to it, but I'll just highlight it here. And like, again, I've been kind of talking about in general, all the last, like Venus, Mercury, and Mars moving through the halfway point between the nodes as being this kind of like seeing this, the south node of like decreasing and things lowering and slowing down and seeing the winter of things. I think that the sun has reached that halfway point now. So I think in many ways, you know, Virgo season in general is a time when we start to really feel like the summer's coming to an end. But I think with the sun making that halfway point between the nodes, this is maybe even just having a very clear and illuminated understanding and knowing now that the winter that's coming is going to be full of, you know, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be strictly what we've been having the last months. It may be even less. It may be very slow, but it won't be as the way it was the year before, especially the last years before, because the nodes will eventually change signs. And it will mean that the decreasing time will be in a different season. It won't be just in the winter. So it could mean that maybe how I've been seeing it is like, you know, this winter with the pandemic and everything, it's like, I think there's going to be like kind of some things are locked down, some things are not. It's going to be kind of a not fully open, but not fully closed either. And I think this is us coming to understand that more, coming to illumination about what this winter means. Okay, so moving forward, the moon then will make that square to Jupiter. So there's quite a bit of aspect lines here right now, so I'll just highlight it. And again, I think this is like, you know, you're doing your best. That's all anyone can really ask of you. And, you know, if something or someone else is not on the same page as you right now, and there's some sort of conflict of interest, it's not necessarily your problem. We are not superheroes here. We're human beings. And we can't go through life expecting to make the whole world happy, because eventually, you know, we're going to step on someone's toes. We're going to even step on our own toes because we're going to burn ourselves out trying to do that. we're going to disrupt on some level the status quo, and either we can accept that and do our best to do our best, or we continue to let the shadows of others and the world, weigh in on all of our affairs. Then in my opinion, we're not really living if we let that happen. We're only going to be living in fear, and the motivations for what we're doing are going to be based in fear. And so I feel like this, on some level, is some opportunity to make a change towards new motivations. Maybe we've been acting on ways of doing things that we're trying to do, like I said, the best we can. And yeah, maybe it's not what is, it's not really working for some people. There's some sort of off page with somebody else or some group of people, or the status quo, or some sort of potentiality, and how Jupiter's trying to unify things that are decentralized, and someone trying to bring the pieces together. We're trying to get our things done too, and maybe those are not on the same page on some level. But we can't just be afraid of trying to make the whole world happy. We have to keep working towards whatever it is we're working towards. And I like to think it's good to stick to the plan. Of course, don't just walk all over other people. That's not what I'm saying. It's just you can't be expecting to take care of yourself if you don't even take care of yourself. So enjoy what is yours, I think, and what you've been done to enjoy what it is you've worked for. It's up to you whether you or not you're going to enjoy your life. Nobody else is responsible for your ability to enjoy yourself. And so I think, easy does it. Okay, and then right after that, Moon makes that the trine to Mercury just before Mercury switches into Libra. So it's really, I think in general, even if whatever message we send out is not necessarily a message that goes along with this, the groupthink experience, the group status quo, the group, and how there's a unifying forces and unifying voices and unifying gravity to the potentialities in this future progressed oriented thing with Jupiter and Saturn and Aquarius. We can get a message out there now with the trine to Mercury. We can say the thing, we can publish the story, we can communicate the idea, let others know that you're thinking and doing something that's worth knowing, worth appreciating, and will be good in general for a situation in whatever shape form it takes. This is like sending in a message that will be received, will be appreciated by some, especially some that are on a journey, on a path, anything, because now the sun is in Mercury. So those of us that are following a plot line or following a direction, trying to work towards ambitions, the message will be heard by that. And and I think even if it's not the thing that the whole world wants, with that square to Jupiter, square to Aquarius, it will be heard and it will be acknowledged. So I think this is a good time to submit some sort of application, get that thing done and out there, do all the work and packing ahead of time in some level. Bring with Virgo, it's all about preparingness, and bring a lot more peace of mind to the coming days. And then the last thing that happens on Sunday is the moon then moves into Gemini. So again, an energy shift. Now it's a time to be more expressive, youthful, curious, maybe back to enjoying some level the magic of the moment, because we're getting things done. We're getting the list checked off so that we can get back to being a bit more social, being a bit more free and flexible. And the moon is carrying over that trine it just made to Mercury. So, this is like knowing that, all the work and all those exchanges, they do work, they do make sense. it does help things. It does make things work again. So even though there were squares to Aquarius as the moon was going through Taurus, now there's trines. There's trines to Venus, trines to Saturn and Jupiter while the moon goes through Gemini. So, you know, maybe those things stubbed toes that we did, but maybe now people are, others and you are seeing that it was the right thing to do, whatever it was. And I think this is making good use of a bit of maybe some of the chaos. This is like handling things as they come, being flexible, doing what needs to be done. The time, of course, to relax will come again. It's just not maybe necessarily yet. It's still time to be a bit more busy, a bit more social, a bit more getting things done. Things are coming also down to a close. Now that the moon is in Gemini, it's going to be moving into that last quarter moon tomorrow. So things are kind of closing down. But as the moon gets closer to the North Node, it also means things are increasing on some level. So with being in a Mercury ruled sign, it's like information exchanges, and there's a bit more hecticness that can't necessarily be ignored. So really, it's not time to curl up. It's not time to avoid problems. It's time to do things that need to be done. So yeah, there will be closure coming up in the next week because the moon's going to make the new moon. So there's closure to things. There's going to be new beginnings, new lunar cycle. But right now you have to prepare for that. You have to get the most out of this busyness, these positive aspects the moon's going to be making to Venus, Jupiter, and Saturn. Right. Okay, so let's move on into Monday. So yeah, first things first, moon makes the conjunction with the North Node. So there's an amplification, there's an unsteadiness, an excessiveness, and extremes to informations and to the details that need to be dealt with in that Mercury ruled sign, Gemini. And now that Mercury is out of, you know, sorry, but, you know, if we go back a bit, you know, as the moon's perfecting the conjunction to North Node, Mercury's just about to leave into Libra. You can see that there. They kind of do it simultaneously. So, you know, whatever needs to be done needs doing. It's better to get it done, because moving forward, the conversations are now going to be changing. They're going to be dealing with more Libra, Venus things. They're going to be about, you know, social exchanges, relationship making, relationship keeping, making compromises between groups and others in those exchanges that are going to be maybe a bit more rapid and negotiated, that are all about keeping the peace, keeping the balance. You know, remember also that Mercury is going to be, you know, like through this whole year, Mercury's been retrograding in all the air signs. So Mercury's going to retrograde in Libra in September, which means that we're going to need to go back over something. That's going on now. From now until that retrograde cycle, something's going to need to go on over. Not necessarily exactly now, because it's going to be not until Mercury gets into shadow, but things are going to be whatever kind of Venus Libra things, something's going to be needed to go back over. And you know, it's just a fact. We can't solve all the world's problems. We can only deal with the necessities. We can try to do our best. We can try to smooth out, and then past that, you know, if things don't work out with others, try to smooth out the other exchanges that didn't completely get resolved along the way. So yeah, I'm just going to talk about now Mercury, just that ingress into Venus. It's now into Libra. It's now joining Venus, and for the most part, I think this is going to be nice. Because it's a nice transition into September, but it's going to be kind of a short period while that Venus and Mercury are in the same sign. Venus is going to leave into Scorpio, lose dignity, go into detriment actually, and then Mercury will be alone there, and then we'll make a retrograde there, and it'll be kind of a complicated Mercury-Mars thing, I think, again. Anyway, so, you know, What's nice about this, though, for the time being, is that like Venus, Mercury is not going to be making so many hostile transits for the most part for the time being. And it's not co-present with Mars now. So there's less of an urgency, there's less of a pushingness, less of a forcefulness to exchanges. And we can kind of go back to keeping the peace. We can get back to finding ways of exchanging and negotiating for peace in general. We can put our minds out into relationships, onto celebrations, onto good judgment, and binding things together rather than pulling them apart. So, this is about learning and being flexible with the highest senses of beauty, which is what Libra really represents, this balance to draw together through words and communications. Because Venus wants to bring things together, to bind things together. So we can find a way of making exchanges that work, again, for maybe both parties involved, or to at the very least, prepare some sort of proposal that can be digested, accepted, tolerated, and diffuse any sort of sticky, tricky, or hostile exchanges that may have been going on while Mercury was in Virgo with Mars. So let's move forward now. Moon then perfects that last quarter moon. So yeah, last quarter moon. It's time to let go of what's not been working during this lunar cycle. We need to focus on closing up the cycle, not trying to add more things. It's about consolidating things. So releasing former ways of doing things that maybe we've been trying to use in this cycle. We have to let go of those things. So, seeing what has been holding us back, especially as the moon makes the trine to Saturn. It's like being more in touch with the temporality of things in a positive, more supported way, as we have to let go of things that are not working according to the plot line, according to the context we're in. The context and the plot line are off. And so something needs to be changed, something that needs to be consolidated and let go. So there's a new beginning around the corner. The new moon's going to be next week. And if we can let go of what's not working, we can resolve the main points. We can at least have our minds made up on something, on whatever story it is we're writing and what context we're living in. We can try to make a change to what's not working between those two parts of life. So yeah, it's time to consolidate. It's time to make a change in the direction that we're going in, so that we can settle down and move back into the process we want to be on. It's time to stop worrying and get back to what needs to be done. So yeah, and like I said, the moon right away then trines with Saturn. So I think on some level, and this is a nice thing to close this week of transits up, is that, we get a reward for making difficult decisions. This is feeling like we did the right thing. This is getting support from the judgment call is being made based on our actions. And if we spent the last days working on practicing our principles, then this transit is going to give us the open space, the breathing space, the bit of fresh air that comes from knowing that there's going to be a little less distractions hindering us from doing what needs to be done moving forward, what needs to be let go of, what needs to be consolidated, and not feeling like there's anything to be ashamed of in what we've done so far, not overthinking the situation because our minds are cleared. We did the right thing. And I think that's what this transit is emphasizing. And, sure, maybe the right thing can be done, can be a bit boring, can be a bit dry, it's not so exciting, but at least it provides us with the peace of mind we're going to need if we want to continue to consolidate our plans in order to deal with challenges of the here and now. So that the new beginning that's just around the corner with the Virgo new moon is one that is preparing us for the winter to come, the future to come, the challenges down the road. Okay, so that's it for all the transits this week. Let's close up that the transit video. I'm just gonna say a little bit about next week, not too much. For the most part, it will be, again, a continuation of this lovely pocket of astrology with Venus and Libra. But we're going to have that Mars opposition to Neptune. So, you know, puncturing a hole in whatever sort of fantasy bubble we've been living in. Again, this reality checks. But then we also get Mercury trining Saturn and Venus trining Jupiter. Good things. These are good things. So there's still a lot of good energy to be working with, good negotiations, good deals to be made, good commitments to embark on, and things that are going to be towards a bigger picture of things, towards bigger potentials for the future. So everyone, I hope you can enjoy some more of Venus in Libra, and happy birthday to all the Virgos. Welcome to Virgo season. I wish you all a lovely week. Take care. Keep coming back. Bye for now.